The taser's 50,000 volts hit 80-year-old George Patterson in the middle of First National Bank's marble lobby. "I told you to move faster," the security guard shouted as George convulsed on the floor, his walker clattering away. His cry, taking too long to fill out a withdrawal slip with arthritic hands that had once defused bombs in Vietnam. Customers screamed. Tellers ducked behind bulletproof glass. Nobody helped. But George's medical alert had already notified his son. Commander Michael Patterson was in a briefing with 30 Navy SEALs when the alert came through. "Dad? Cardiac event, First National Bank." Michael stood up, his face stone cold. "Gentlemen, someone just tased my father. We're going to surround that bank, and nobody leaves until I get answered." Within 10 minutes, every exit would be blocked. Every account would be frozen, and the guard would learn that some mistakes destroy entire institutions. First National Bank's Virginia Beach branch stood like a monument to money. 3 stories of glass and steel, marble imported from Italy, and a reputation for serving the wealthy elite. The lobby was designed to impress, with 30-foot ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and security guards who treated anyone without a premium account like potential criminals. George Patterson didn't have a premium account. He had a simple checking account he'd opened in 1981, the year after he'd returned from his 3rd tour in Vietnam. At 80 years old, he still came in person once a month to withdraw cash for groceries and his wife Linda's medication. The online banking system confused him, and his Parkinson's made typing difficult. That Tuesday morning, George had dressed carefully, pressed khakis, a clean polo shirt, and his Vietnam veteran cap with unit. His walker, a recent necessity after a fall, had tennis balls on the feet to help it slide on smooth floors. He moved slowly but with dignity, each step measured and careful. Security guard Derek White watched George enter with immediate disdain. 28 years old, failed police academy twice, Derek had been working bank security for 6 months and had developed a theory: slow-moving elderly people were either senile or casing the place. He'd already had 3 complaints filed against him for aggressive behavior toward elderly customers, all dismissed by his supervisor, who happened to be his cousin. George approached the withdrawal counter at 2:15 p.m. The bank was busy, lunch rush ending, lines at every teller window. George took a withdrawal slip and began filling it out at the standing desk, his hand trembling from Parkinson's as he tried to write. Account number, date, amount $200, signature. Each field took time. His hands shook. The pen slipped. He had to start over twice when the tremors made his writing illegible. Other customers moved around him, some impatient, most understanding. Everyone could see he was struggling. Derek White saw something else, a problem disrupting his efficiently run security zone. "Sir, you need to move faster," Derek announced loudly, walking over to George. "There are other customers waiting." George looked up, confused. "I'm sorry, son. My hands don't work like they used to." "Almost done. You've been here 10 minutes. "It's only been 3 minutes," an elderly woman nearby corrected. "I've been watching. Leave him alone." Derek turned on her. "Ma'am, mind your own business." George tried to finish the slip, but his anxiety made the tremors worse. The pen fell from his fingers, rolling across the marble floor. When he bent to retrieve it, his walker shifted, and he nearly fell. "That's it," Derek declared. "You're disrupting bank operations. You need to leave." George straightened slowly, confusion in his eyes. "I just need to withdraw money for my wife's chemotherapy copay. Please, just give me another moment." "I said leave. Now." "I have a legal account here," George said quietly but firmly. "I have the right to access my money." That's when Derek's training kicked in. The wrong training, the excessive force training, the compliance through pain mentality he'd learned from YouTube videos and police procedure manuals he'd misunderstood. He pulled his taser. "Last warning. Move, or I'll make you move." The bank lobby went silent. Customers stepped back. Tellers looked up from their windows. The bank manager, Thomas Harrison, peered out from his office but didn't intervene. George stood his ground. Not from defiance but from In Vietnam, he'd faced enemy soldiers, booby traps, and prison camps. But he'd never expected to face a weapon in his own bank. "Son," There's no need for Derek fired. The twin prongs hit George center mass, piercing through his polo shirt. 50,000 volts coursed through his body, overriding his nervous system, causing every muscle to contract simultaneously. George's scream was cut short as his jaw locked. His body went rigid, then collapsed. He hit the marble floor hard. His walker flew sideways. His veteran cap fell off, revealing a scalp scarred from old shrapnel wounds. His body convulsed as Derek held the trigger for 5 seconds, the maximum recommended deployment, though guidelines said elderly subjects should receive reduced exposure. "Stop! You're killing him!" the elderly woman screamed. Derek finally released the trigger. George lay still, only his chest showing shallow, erratic movement. A dark stain spread across his khakis where he'd lost bladder control. Blood pooled from where his head had hit the floor, but in his pocket, the medical alert device Michael had given him had activated the moment his heart rhythm became irregular. It sent immediate data. Location, heart rate critical, possible cardiac event in progress. 3 miles away at Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek, Commander Michael Patterson was in the middle of a tactical briefing with SEAL Team 4 when his emergency phone erupted. "Emergency, Dad. Cardiac event, First National Bank. Response required." The biometric data was terrifying, heart rate 180 and irregular, blood pressure dropping, movement sensor showing collapse. Michael stood so fast his chair flew backward. "Everyone mount up. Now." "My father's having a cardiac event at First National Bank." But Chief Petty Officer Robinson was already pulling up something on his phone. "Commander, there's already social media posts. Someone saying an old man was just tased at First National." Michael's face went from concerned to tased. "Video's going live now." Michael watched 5 seconds of shaky footage. His father on the ground, convulsing, a security guard standing over him with a taser. "Full tactical response," Michael commanded. "We're surrounding that bank. Nobody in, nobody out until I get answers." 30 Navy SEALs moved like a single organism. Into vehicles, tactical gear grabbed, not for combat, but for presence. Vests marked U.S. Navy, communication gear, medical kits. They took 6 vehicles, Michael in the lead SUV already on the phone. "First National Bank, main branch," he told the 911 dispatcher. "This is Commander Patterson, Navy SEAL Team 4. My father has been tased and is in cardiac distress at your location. We are responding. Sir, I'll send police. We'll be there in 3 minutes. Have every ambulance you can ready." Back at the bank, chaos reigned. George still hadn't moved. A nurse who'd been in line had rushed over, checking for a pulse, weak and irregular. She'd started CPR immediately, pumping his chest while screaming for someone to call. Derek stood frozen, taser still in hand, reality beginning to dawn. He was resisting. He was filling out a withdrawal slip. Someone shouted. Manager Thomas Harrison finally emerged, saw George on the floor, and immediately thought about liability. Everyone remain calm. "This is a security matter." "Security matter," the nurse performing CPR gasped between compressions. "This man is dying." That's when they heard the vehicles, multiple engines, approaching fast, tires screeching as they surrounded the bank. Through the glass walls everyone could see black SUVs positioning at every exit. 30 men in tactical gear emerged, moving with military precision. Michael was first through the door, his eyes immediately finding his father. George was still on the floor, the nurse performing CPR, Derek standing nearby looking terrified. "Continue CPR," Michael told the nurse, his voice professional despite the rage burning inside him. "You're doing great." He knelt beside his father, taking in everything. The taser prongs, still embedded in George's chest, the blood from his head wound, the evidence of lost bodily control. "Dad," Michael whispered, checking for a pulse. "Weak, thready. But there." "Who did this?" Michael asked, though he already knew from the video. Every finger in the bank pointed at Derek. Chief Robinson was already there with his medical kit. "Commander, we need to get him stable before moving him." Other SEALs had positioned themselves at every exit, not threateningly, just present, immovable. The message was clear. This was now a crime scene. Derek tried to speak. He was refusing to leave. I had to. You tased an 80-year-old man for filling out a withdrawal slip, Michael said, his voice deadly quiet. My father, a Vietnam veteran with 3 Purple Hearts and a Silver Star. The police arrived, but found themselves facing an unusual situation. Navy SEALs had locked down a bank, but legally, no weapons drawn, no threats made, just their presence creating an impenetrable barrier. Captain Jennifer Martinez assessed quickly. Commander Patterson, my father was assaulted with a weapon while conducting legal banking business, Michael stated. The attacker is that security guard. We have multiple witnesses and video evidence. Martinez watched the cell phone footage someone showed her. It was damning. An elderly man with a walker, simply standing at a counter, suddenly tased and collapsing. Mr. White, you're under arrest for assault with a deadly weapon and elder abuse. As Derek was cuffed, he made his situation worse. He was too slow. He was holding up the line. Every SEAL turned to look at him. The temperature in the bank seemed to drop. He was withdrawing money for his wife's chemotherapy, Michael said. She has stage 3 breast cancer. He comes once a month because online banking confuses him. And you tased him for being slow. The EMTs arrived but had to be cleared by the SEALs. George had regained consciousness but was disoriented, his heart rhythm still dangerously irregular. Michael? George's voice was weak, confused. I'm here, Dad. You're safe now. Did I get the money? We'll get the money, Dad. Don't worry about that now. As George was being loaded into the ambulance, Bank President Richard Clark arrived, having been called by the manager. He saw SEALs at every entrance, police cars, ambulances, and immediately understood he was facing a disaster. Commander Patterson, I'm deeply sorry. Your security guard tased my father for having Parkinson's. Michael cut him off. Your manager watched and did nothing. Your tellers hid behind glass. Your bank created this. We'll cover all medical expenses. You'll do more than that, Michael said. Every account my father has, every loan, every service fee, all forgiven. Medical bills, paid, and your security protocols, completely reformed. Or I'll ensure every veteran in Virginia knows what First National does to elderly customers. The video was already viral. Bank Tasers, veteran exploding across social media. The footage was shocking. An elderly man with a walker, simply trying to bank, suddenly attacked with a weapon designed for dangerous criminals. At the hospital, the news was concerning. George had suffered a mild heart attack triggered by the tasing. His pacemaker, which Derek hadn't known about, had been disrupted by the electrical charge. He required immediate surgery to replace it. If that taser had hit directly over his pacemaker, the cardiologist told Michael, your father would be dead. During George's surgery, the 30 SEALs maintained vigil in the hospital waiting room. The scene, elite warriors waiting for news about an elderly veteran, was photographed and shared worldwide. The investigation revealed Derek White's history. Fired from 2 previous security jobs for excessive force, multiple complaints at First National, all covered up by his cousin's supervisor. The bank had known he was dangerous but kept him because he was efficient at moving homeless people away from the ATMs. The true scope of First National Bank's systemic discrimination came to light when a whistleblower emerged. Sarah Chen, a former assistant manager, provided investigators with 18 months of internal emails and recorded conversations that revealed a deliberate policy targeting elderly customers. Code Gray was what they called it, a system for identifying customers over 70 who could be pushed toward expensive services, unnecessary fees, or discouraged from visiting branches altogether. George Patterson's name appeared on the Code Gray list with a note, extremely slow, ties up resources, military pension only, encourage digital transition or account closure. When Michael read this document, his hands shook with rage. They marked him like prey, he told his team. My father was literally on a target list. The revelation prompted an emergency meeting of SEAL Team 4's leadership. What they discovered went deeper. 17 other veterans' parents were on similar lists at various banks across Virginia. This wasn't just about George anymore. It was about systematic financial abuse of an entire generation. Master Chief Williams proposed something unprecedented. Operation Golden Shield. SEALs would accompany elderly veterans to banks, standing as silent witnesses to ensure respectful treatment. Within a week, 300 active and retired SEALs had volunteered. The first Golden Shield operation occurred 3 weeks after George left the hospital. 83-year-old Marie Thompson, widow of a Marine killed in Korea, needed to resolve a banking error. 2 SEALs in dress uniforms accompanied her. The bank manager personally handled her case. The error was fixed in minutes. Marie cried. It was the first time in years she'd been treated with dignity at a bank. During this time, Derek White's family approached George with an unexpected request. Derek's grandmother, 91-year-old Dorothy White, was dying and wanted to meet the man her grandson had hurt. George agreed, against Michael's objections. In the hospice room, Dorothy took George's trembling hand. "My grandson was raised better," she whispered. "His grandfather was Navy, like you. Died at sea in 1968. Derek grew up angry at everyone who reminded him of that loss. "I'm sorry you paid for our family's pain." George sat quietly for a moment, then spoke. "Ma'am, I served with men who died at sea in '68. What ship was your husband on?" "USS Scorpion," Dorothy replied, tears flowing. George's eyes widened. "The Scorpion, a submarine lost with all hands, 99 souls." He squeezed her hand gently. "Your husband was a hero. Every man on that boat was. Your grandson dishonors that legacy, but that's not your fault." Dorothy died 2 days later. At her funeral, George appeared in his dress uniform, medals gleaming, standing at attention as they lowered her casket. Derek, in shackles and orange jumpsuit, saw this act of grace and broke down completely. The investigation also revealed that Thomas Harrison, the bank manager who'd hidden during the tasing, had received bonuses for reducing friction events. Corporate speak for getting elderly customers to stop coming to the branch. His bonus, the previous year, $47,000, earned partly by making banking so difficult for seniors that they gave up trying. When this news broke, something beautiful happened. Young customers began accompanying elderly strangers to banks, calling themselves banking buddies. College students, young professionals, even teenagers would stand with seniors, ensuring they weren't rushed, pressured, or abused. A year later, George returned to First National Bank, not as a customer but as the guest of honor for the unveiling of the Patterson Protection Protocols, a nationwide standard for elder banking rights. As he cut the ribbon with shaking hands, he spoke to the crowd. "A bank should be a place of safety, where anyone, regardless of age or ability, can access what's theirs with dignity." It took 50,000 volts to teach that lesson, but if it protects one elderly person from abuse, it was worth it. The crowd erupted in applause, but George wasn't finished. He turned to the bank executives present. "Remember, we built this economy with our labor, defended it with our lives. The least you can do is let us access our own money in peace." Within 24 hours, First National faced a crisis. Veterans organizations called for nationwide boycotts. Customers closed accounts in droves. The stock price dropped 18%. The Department of Justice opened a civil rights investigation. 3 days after the incident, something unexpected happened. 12 elderly men arrived at the hospital, all Vietnam veterans from George's old unit. They'd seen the news and driven from across the country. "We heard Patterson needed backup," their leader, 82-year-old former Sergeant James Murphy, told Michael. "In the 101st, we don't leave anyone behind." Even 50 years later, they maintained their own vigil, telling stories of George's heroism, how he'd dismantled 17 bombs by hand, saved a village from a minefield, carried wounded soldiers through jungle for miles. "Your dad never talked about it, did he?" Murphy asked Michael. "Never," Michael admitted. "That's George. Real heroes don't brag. They just serve." George woke from surgery to find his room full of his old unit. For the first time since the tasing, he smiled. "Took you long enough to visit," he whispered. The trial was swift. Derek White was convicted of aggravated assault, elder abuse, and civil rights violations. The judge, noting the complete lack of remorse, sentenced him to 7 years in prison. "White," the judge said, You weaponized banking security against an elderly disabled veteran trying to access his own money. You showed no patience, no compassion, no humanity. This sentence reflects society's disgust at your action. First National Bank settled out of court for an undisclosed sum, rumored to be 8 figures. They implemented the Patterson Protocol, enhanced training for dealing with elderly and disabled customers, removal of tasers from security equipment, and a mandate that no physical force could be used without manager approval and police presence. George recovered, though he never walked without assistance again. The electrical shock had worsened his Parkinson's significantly, but he became an advocate for elder banking rights, testifying before Congress about financial discrimination against the elderly. 6 months later, at a Navy ceremony, the Chief of Naval Operations presented George with a Civilian Service Award. Mr. Patterson, your courage in standing up to abuse, even at personal cost, reflects the highest values of naval service. You showed that the fight for dignity never ends. George, supported by Michael and Linda, spoke briefly. I've been shot at by professionals. Being tased by an amateur was worse because it happened in a place that should be safe. Every elderly person deserves respect, especially when they're just trying to live. The standing ovation lasted 15 minutes. Derek White, from prison, eventually wrote a letter. Mr. Patterson, I'm sorry. I saw slowness as defiance. I saw age as weakness. I never saw the human being. I'm paying for that blindness. George never responded, but he did something else. He ensured Derek's commissary account received $20 monthly. Everyone deserves a chance to become better, he told Michael. If this story moved you, remember that elderly veterans face discrimination daily in places that should serve them. Banks, stores, institutions meant to help instead harm those who move slowly, speak softly, or struggle with modern technology. Patience costs nothing. Impatience can cost everything.